The worst part wasn't that he left me, it was that he laughed when I called begging for help. The laughter echoed louder than any goodbye ever could. I stood in the middle of the cool marble lobby of the Hotel degli Artisti, blinking at the hotel concierge like he had just mispronounced my own name. A bead of sweat slid down my temple. Florence in June was already simmering, but it wasn't the heat making me dizzy. It was the silence, the absence, the impossibility of it all. No, I'm sorry, I repeated slowly, carefully, like I was the one who didn't understand English. You said, "My husband checked out, yes, signora." The concierge nodded. "This morning. He also canceled the second part of your reservation. Just him on the invoice now." I stared at him. Behind me, the hotel's glass doors framed the cobbled streets where tourists chattered in cheerful tones and Vespas zipped by like bees. The city pulsed with life as if nothing had changed. As if Jason hadn't just vanished. I pulled out my phone. It was almost dead, 1% battery. But it was enough. "Call Jason," I murmured to Siri. "Ring. Ring. Click." His voice was casual. "Oh, Claire, you sound so stressed. What's the matter? Where are you?" I asked, each syllable sharp-clipped. "What's going on?" He chuckled. A low, rich sound. "Relax. It's a prank. You'll be fine. Enjoy the art or whatever. I'll call you later." Then the line went dead. I stared at the screen until it blacked out. A joke. I'd heard that word too many times. When he forgot our anniversary dinner but showed up drunk with fast food at midnight, it was a joke. When he turned the thermostat down to 50-degree file in January, just a joke. When he changed my phone settings to Russian for 2 days and laughed as I struggled to navigate back. Lighten up, Claire. Jason's humor always had a target. And the punchline was always me. Still, I tried the front desk again. "Do you have any emergency contacts on the reservation?" I asked, clinging to rationality. "Any travel insurance info?" The concierge looked genuinely sympathetic. "No, signora. He said everything was private, he paid in full. My flight back." I stammered, "Was that cancelled too?" He checked. "Yes. The ticket under your name has been voided." I felt like the world tilted 10 degrees sideways. I sat down on the nearest lobby chair and yanked out my wallet. I still had my bank cards. Maybe this was just an elaborate, horrible Jason-style lesson in independence. Maybe he wanted me to figure things out for once. Maybe declined. Again. And again. I tried the second card. Then the joint account card. Declined. I opened my banking app. The joint account showed 0.0. Jason had pulled the funds. Probably while I was sleeping. Maybe before we even boarded the plane. That's when the voicemail pinged. 1 bar of service. Just enough. His voice again, like oil on water. "Let's see how long you survive without me." I didn't cry. Not immediately. Not when the concierge offered me water. Not when I walked out into the stifling sun, dragging my suitcase and feeling each wheel catch on the cobblestones like they were conspiring against me. I wandered until I found myself at Piazza della Repubblica, sitting on a wide stone bench beneath the carousel. My phone was dead. My cards were dead. And somehow I felt more alive than I had in years. Jason hadn't just left me. He had engineered my absence. He had planned this with the same cold calculation he used when managing our budget, when controlling my calendar, when subtly correcting me in front of friends. And I had called it love. I had defended it as just his way. I watched children run in circles, their sandals slapping against sun-warmed stone. A street musician played something wistful on a violin notes that wove through my ribs like threads. I was 733 miles from home, and for the first time in 5 years I was finally seeing Jason for who he was. Every single view means a meal for someone in need. Just by watching this video, you're giving warmth, hope, and a full plate to those less fortunate. So watch now, share now, subscribe to the channel, and let's spread love together. When a man takes away your money, your ID, your name, he's not joking. He's stripping you bare. The sun had shifted overhead, casting long shadows between the cafe tables and flickering through the worn linen umbrella above me. I could feel the heat creeping down my back, but I didn't move. Movement required energy, focus, a plan. I had none of the above. Instead, I stared at the chipped ceramic mug in front of me, watching the foam of the cappuccino settle into a tired swirl. It wasn't mine, I hadn't ordered it. A man at the next table had noticed my shaking hands and lent me his phone and his Wi-Fi code without asking questions. When I'd finished trying, failing to reach Jason, he pushed the coffee toward me with a nod and walked off without waiting for thanks. The kindness made me want to cry more than the cruelty had. I kept redialing anyway. The first call didn't go through. The second connected for exactly 5 seconds before his voicemail clicked in. I knew better than to leave a message. It would give him something to replay and mock later. That is, if he hadn't already blocked me. So I tried logging into our bank accounts. The joint account still showed 0. My personal account now required multi-factor authentication, which I couldn't complete without access to my US phone number, and that line had been suspended somehow, likely by him. The last text I'd gotten before my phone died was from Verizon. This line has been temporarily deactivated per account holder request. Account holder, Jason. Even the bills had been in his name. He handled everything: travel, hotel bookings, tipping at restaurants. He told me it was because I always got flustered with conversions or would tip too much like a tourist. I let him do it. At first it seemed romantic, like being cared for. Now it just felt like I'd been babysat, leashed. I connected to the cafe's Wi-Fi and found the emergency contact page for the US Embassy in Florence. A chat bubble popped up after 10 minutes of trying to bypass the error-ridden mobile site. The operator who finally answered had the tone of someone reading off a DMV screen. Are you injured or in immediate danger? No. Do you have valid identification? No. My husband, he took my passport. I see. Unfortunately, if you are not in possession of your identification, we will need to verify your citizenship via Social Security verification or a contact from home. My sister. I'm trying to reach her. She's in Arizona. You may also come in person between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Monday through Thursday. It's Friday. Yes. I paused. So there's nothing you can do now. We advise seeking temporary shelter until our office reopens. Can you help me find that? I recommend checking local hostels or municipal services. Is there anything else I can assist with today? No, I said quietly, and the chat ended. I closed the laptop slowly, as if the act of shutting it might somehow preserve whatever scraps of composure I had left. My hands were trembling again. Then a soft thud, a glass of water placed beside the cappuccino. I looked up into the face of a waitress, mid-30s, olive skin, dark eyes that didn't flinch at my red-rimmed ones. She didn't speak right away. She just sat on the chair across from me and folded her apron in her lap, like we were meeting for coffee after a long day. I'm Lucia, she said after a moment. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words tangled and died in my throat. Lucia didn't push. She sat with a patience I hadn't known I needed. I saw you trying to call someone, she said gently. And I heard some of it. You don't need to explain. I shook my head. It's stupid. I shouldn't. No, she interrupted. No, should. Her kindness nearly undid me. I took a deep breath. Then another. The tears didn't come, but they wanted to. She leaned back slightly, arms resting on the chair's curved sides. You're not the first woman I've seen here with that look. What the hell just happened to my life? Look. I let out something between a laugh and a sob. She smiled, then tapped the table. I don't know much, but I have a cousin. He's not a cop or anything, but he's practical. My eyebrows lifted slightly. Practical. She nodded, reaching into her apron pocket and pulling out a pen. With swift looping letters, she scribbled something on a napkin. He helps people. When no one else does. Especially women who thought they had everything under control until they didn't. She slid the napkin across the table like it was a lottery ticket or a lifeline. His name's Marco, she said, scribbling on a napkin. He used to work in law. He knows how to handle people who think they're untouchable. Jason always said marriage should be exciting. I just didn't realize I was the one being played. The cobblestones under my feet were uneven, slick from the earlier sweep of street water, or maybe just worn down by centuries of footsteps heavier than mine. I stood just outside a narrow bookstore whose window was cluttered with yellowed paperbacks and secondhand Italian translations of American thrillers. The last sliver of sunlight dipped behind the terracotta rooftops, casting the alley in a burnished, dusky hue. I was early. Or maybe I was just anxious. Lucia had walked me part way, then left without fuss, just a nod and a gentle reminder. He's quiet, but good. Now I waited. The kind of waiting that wasn't about time, but about bracing yourself for what came next. I rubbed my arms against the growing evening chill, more from nerves than temperature. Jason used to joke with his friends that I wouldn't survive without Google Maps or him. They'd laugh. I'd laugh. But the laughter always had a taste, bitter, metallic wrong. This wasn't new. Jason's idea of fun often came at my expense. The restaurant, he told me, required formal wear, only to show up in jeans while I stood there in heels and a cocktail dress. The time he pretended to lose his wedding ring in front of his coworkers, then found it miraculously behind a vending machine. Little stabs dressed as humor. This latest stunt, leaving me alone, broke humiliated across the world, was just the crescendo, the finale. Maybe he thought I'd cry, beg, crawl back to the hotel in tears. Maybe he thought I'd book a flight with my own money, or call my sister and confess that he was right. I couldn't do anything alone. But I was still standing, still breathing, still here. The sound of soft footsteps echoed down the alley. Marco didn't look how I'd imagined. No sunglasses or leather jacket, no dramatic brooding. He was quiet, compact in his movements, not small, but self-contained. He wore a plain gray t-shirt, jeans that looked worn in, and carried nothing but a canvas messenger bag slung across his chest. A stray cat wound between his ankles as he approached, brushing its tail against his shin before trotting off into the shadows. Claire. His voice was calm, even. I nodded. You must be Marco. He didn't shake my hand, didn't smile wide or offer fake pleasantries. Instead, he glanced at the bench across from the shop and gestured gently. Sit, I did. He joined me, letting silence stretch for a beat longer than was comfortable, but not in a way that felt rude, more like he was giving me space to speak first. So I did. I'm not used to this, I said, crossing my arms instinctively. Any of it. He nodded, letting me go on. I was here with my husband. He left. Took the money. My passport. Shut off my phone. He said it was a joke. Marco's brow barely moved. No gasp. No dramatic reaction. He asked, "Do you believe him?" I looked away. Not anymore. Another pause. Then with deliberate gentleness he asked, "What do you want to do next?" I blinked. No one had asked me that yet. Not, "Are you okay?" Not what happened. Not why would he do that. Just what do you want? I let the words settle inside me. I want to go home, I said. Marco gave the smallest of nods, reached into his messenger bag, pulled out a folder creased at the edges, slightly water-warped. Inside were neatly printed forms. You'll need these, he said, sliding them over. Emergency U.S. passport request. I've helped before. I stared at the documents. You just carry these around? Sometimes, he replied. Florence sees a lot of abandonment, tourists left behind, not always by accident, not always by strangers. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. As I scanned the forms trying to piece together next steps, photos, witnesses, identification, affidavits, something settled in me, a new kind of weight. The kind that said, "You're still in this. You still have choices." I glanced up. Why, I asked. Why help me? Marco tilted his head just enough to let the light catch in his eyes. He smiled small sharp. Because I know men like your husband. And I like watching them lose. For the first time in days, I wasn't improvising. I had a plan. Or rather, Marco did. The U.S. consulate in Florence wasn't built to comfort. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, bulletproof glass. It hummed with the cold efficiency of a place designed to function, not to feel. Even the flag in the corner looked tired, its edges curling slightly as if trying to retreat. Marco stood beside me in line, hands tucked in his pockets, his posture relaxed in a way that made my own tension more noticeable. My shoulders were tight, my breathing shallow. I kept checking my hands, surprised I wasn't visibly shaking. The intake officer called my name with mechanical clarity, Claire Morton. I stepped forward. The woman behind the window had a face like carved stone. "Emergency passport application," she asked, not looking up from her screen. "Yes," I said. Marco responded in Italian, smooth and quick. "I only caught pieces, documento temporaneo, denuncia testimony." His tone was calm but assertive, not aggressive, just practiced. The woman glanced at him, then at me. "You're lucky he speaks consulate Italian," she muttered in a tone too clipped to be friendly. "Most tourists just cry." I didn't cry. Instead, I reached into the folder Marco had helped me prepare. The printed forms, the affidavit, the letter he'd translated outlining the situation. We even included a screenshot of the email Jason sent confirming he'd canceled our return tickets. The subject line still read like a slap: "Claire's not coming back." Long story. No signature. No explanation. I watched the officer skim the document. Her face didn't change, but her fingers slowed. Her eyes narrowed. Then she stamped the front page with a hard thud and motioned for me to sign. My pen hovered above the line. Jason's voice flickered in my memory. "You're too impulsive, always jumping into things without thinking." The ink tip hovered. Marco said nothing. And then I signed. The officer took the papers without comment and gestured toward the adjacent seating area. "You'll be called for the photo. It takes 3 business days unless expedited." Marco raised an eyebrow. "Expedited." She nodded, unimpressed. 2 days. It wasn't instant. But it was something. A path. We stepped back outside into the mid-evening breeze. The light was soft now, the edges of the buildings tinged with the kind of glow that only Florence could pull off without looking like a movie set. "Hungry?" Marco asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. He led me 2 blocks away to a tiny trattoria tucked between a tobacco shop and a florist. There were only 4 tables inside. The smell of tomatoes and fresh garlic hung in the air like a promise. We sat in the back corner. I ordered a soup I wouldn't touch. Marco didn't comment when it went cold. I picked at the bread. "He once turned off my phone for a week," I said suddenly. My voice sounded too loud even in a nearly empty room. Just shut it off. Claimed the bill didn't go through. But later I saw the charge. He'd done it on purpose. Said I was getting too attached to texting my sister, that I needed a digital detox. Marco didn't flinch. I sipped water. He said it would teach me to be present. He nodded slowly. And did it? No. It taught me I was alone in the room even when he was in it. The waiter came and went. Marco paid in cash. I didn't argue. We stepped back into the night and I realized how quiet the world felt now that my pulse had slowed. I didn't have my passport yet. I didn't have a return flight. But I had something resembling motion, a direction. Marco walked me back to Lucia's apartment without speaking. Just before the door, he finally said, "You don't need permission to start over. You just need proof." I didn't answer. That night, I slept for the first time in 3 days. No tossing. No gasping awake. And that night, I dreamed Jason was locked outside a house with no door. And I was the one who'd locked it. I sent the text right as I knew he'd be pouring his morning coffee. The timing was delicious. The rooftop cafe wasn't open yet, not officially. But the manager, an old friend of Lucia's, had agreed to let me sit alone for a few minutes before the day began. A kindness, he said. A quiet place to breathe. Or to strike. From where I sat, Florence unfolded in layers of ancient stone and golden light. The Duomo rose from the skyline like a cathedral dreaming itself awake, its dome touched first by the pink edge of the morning. The breeze carried the smell of pastry dough espresso and a hint of citrus from somewhere I couldn't place. I wrapped my sweater tighter around me, though the chill was more adrenaline than air. My phone vibrated against the small saucer beside me, an automated message from the embassy confirming that my temporary passport would be ready the next morning. That wasn't what I was waiting for. I opened my messages and scrolled until I reached the name I should have deleted days ago. Jason Home. I stared at it. He was 7 hours behind, which meant it was just after 6 a.m. in Phoenix. He'd be in the kitchen by now, barefoot on the polished tile floor, pouring that smug French press he always made such a show about. He'd drink it slowly, scrolling stock updates, waiting for the markets to open. I imagined the cup halfway to his lips as his phone buzzed. That brief pause. The flicker of curiosity. Then I began to type. Thanks for everything, babe. Marco's been amazing. No emojis. No punctuation beyond the period. Just enough ambiguity to confuse him to twist. I stared at the words for a long time. My thumb hovered above the screen like it was balancing justice or gasoline. Then I hit send. Immediately after I opened my contacts and deleted his number. The name vanished like vapor and the world didn't stop spinning. If anything, it spun a little lighter. I placed the phone face down. The sky brightened, scattering gold across the terracotta rooftops. A few birds circled the dome. Somewhere below, a Vespa roared to life. Florence waking up. I sat in that moment longer than I meant to. When the waiter finally appeared to set up for breakfast service, I offered a polite nod and took my leave. Down the spiraling stairs and onto the street where the stones felt firmer beneath my feet than they had all week. Marco was waiting by the curb in his usual jeans and that same unassuming gray t-shirt. He didn't ask why I looked flushed. I didn't offer. We walked without speaking, the kind of silence you earned. That afternoon, I let myself drift. I wandered the galleries with tourists stood in front of sculptures that didn't need me to understand them. I ate gelato even though I wasn't hungry. I bought a cheap paperback from the bookstore where I'd met Marco. Something in Italian I couldn't read. Power. I realized sometimes came in tiny acts. In not explaining, in not answering, in walking away and meaning it. That night, Lucia offered me her bedroom and took the couch despite my protests. I thanked her and meant it. She just waved me off with a sleepy smile and said, "Sleep like a woman who has choices." I lay in the dark, the new passport folder clutched in my hands like it might vanish. Then the phone buzzed. 17 missed calls. All from a US number I didn't recognize. But I knew it. Of course I did. Jason always used a separate line for business emergencies. He must have figured I'd block the other. I didn't answer. A voicemail notification appeared. I waited. Then played it. Jason's voice was tight, ugly. "You think you're clever? This isn't over, Claire. I swear to God, if you're with someone, if you think you can just walk away." I didn't listen to the rest. I hit delete. And then I smiled for the first time in 6 days. You don't need to vanish to disappear. You just need to stop answering. Marco's apartment wasn't what I expected. There were no leather chairs or shadowy corners or flickering candles to match the mystique he projected when quiet. Instead, it was minimal. Sparse shelves, a small espresso machine, a single potted plant that looked on the verge of giving up. The windows opened wide toward the Arno River, the breeze whispering in like it knew secrets I didn't yet. I sat cross-legged on his couch, my laptop balanced on my knee screen, brightness dialed low. Marco moved around the kitchen behind me, silent except for the occasional clink of ceramic or hiss of steam. I hadn't asked to stay here. I hadn't needed to. He offered a key without fanfare, said it was temporary, that he'd be gone most of the day. No strings, no questions. Jason once told me that he always knew where I was. Said it with the confident affection of a husband concerned for his wife's safety. That's how I keep you safe, babe. Translation: that's how I keep you controlled. Not anymore. The first thing I did that morning was call the U.S. consulate and request a travel restriction be placed on Jason's ability to access my new documents. It wasn't foolproof, but it slowed him down like closing one window before he realized the door had already been locked. Next came the digital detox, but not the kind Jason would have applauded. I logged out of every joint account. Then I went deeper. Marco sat beside me, a second laptop open in front of him. He wasn't hovering, just guiding. Quietly noting down timestamps, walking me through things I hadn't thought to do before, downloading raw message data, taking screenshots of every financial notification, backing up voicemails to offline storage. Keep a paper trail, he said. Or in this case, digital. Facts move faster than fear. I created a folder on my desktop. I named it Exposure. Then, for extra irony, zipped it up and password protected it. Exposure.zip. Inside every message Jason had sent me in the past year that hinted at control gaslighting or deliberate manipulation. Every receipt that proved he'd closed accounts without telling me. Even screenshots of his Reddit posts. Yes, I found those too. Threads about dealing with clingy wives masked as humor but lined with venom. Jason had always been reckless with his ego. He thought charm could erase arrogance, but the internet never forgets. Marco glanced over at one of the messages I'd just saved and frowned. He wrote that in a group chat. I nodded. Left the wife in Florence. Let's see how she does without a leash. His jaw tensed, but he didn't speak. Just copied the URL and dropped it into a backup spreadsheet labeled Evidence. A part of me wanted him to rage, to spit something sharp or say Jason was a monster. Instead, he said, back it up twice. Cloud and physical. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about proof. Precision. Power. That night, Lucia stopped by briefly with a bag of fresh laundry and a small jar of something herbal she insisted would help me sleep. She didn't stay. Just hugged me gently and whispered, "You're doing better than you think." I didn't cry. After she left, I made tea in Marco's chipped mug and opened the exposure.zip folder again, scrolling through the items I'd collected. Each file a thread, and together they formed a net one Jason had woven himself. I looked at it the way someone might study the outlines of a trap they once lived inside. I had always thought the truth would be messy. Turns out it fit neatly into one folder. I didn't plan to cut deep. I just wanted him to bleed self-doubt for once. Florence pulsed beneath me that morning, bright, unapologetically alive. The farmer's market near Sant'Ambrogio was a flood of color and scent, red tomatoes still warm from the sun, crusty loaves of bread dusted with flour lavender sachets stacked like soft ammunition. Children laughed, vendors barked out their specials, and somewhere a radio played a song I didn't understand, but could feel anyway. Marco trailed beside me, saying little but watching everything. He always gave me space like that, close enough to catch me if I fell distant enough to let me pretend I wouldn't. I wasn't pretending today. I picked up a plum and ran my thumb over its skin, smooth taut, ready to bruise. There was something comforting in its ripeness. I bought 3 and moved on. A vendor with silver hair and soft eyes offered me a bottle of wine without charge. "You look like you need it," he said in broken English. I almost laughed. Marco gave him a nod. I tucked the bottle under my arm like a weapon. We sat on a bench at the edge of the market. The air was full of basil and oil and something electric. Marco leaned back, head tilted toward the sun. I watched him for a second, how his quiet steadiness unnerved me in a different way than Jason's noise ever did. Then I took out my phone. No caption. No tag. Just a single photo, me laughing, my hand on Marco's arm, the Duomo rising behind us like a witness. I hit post and slipped the phone back into my bag. It took 23 minutes. By the time we finished our espresso and walked back toward the Arno, I had 5 missed calls and 2 text messages. One read, "Cute photo. You're not fooling anyone." The other just said, "Answer me." I didn't. Instead, I opened a secure email account Marco had helped me set up and fired off another message to the attorney I'd contacted in Arizona. A woman. I'd chosen her deliberately. Her bio said she specialized in high-conflict divorces and narcissistic financial abuse. Her reply earlier had been brief but promising. "Send all documentation. I'll handle the rest." Today I sent the file exposure.zip. I added a short note. More to come. Marco didn't ask what I was doing on my phone. He didn't need to. That afternoon, while sorting through old shared banking logins, I found it. 3 weeks ago, while we were still home, still fine, in the way people like Jason define fine, he'd transferred $42,000 from our joint savings into a private account. It wasn't even subtle. The label on the transaction read, "Business Reallocation." Bold, almost arrogant. Like he didn't think I'd ever look. I stared at the screen long enough for the sun to shift across the apartment. Jason had once told me I was too emotional to handle money, that he protected me from mistakes. But this wasn't protection. It was theft premeditated under the umbrella of love. I forwarded the transaction to the lawyer. An hour later, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then listened from the safety of Marco's kitchen. The voice was quiet, professional. "Hi, Claire, this is Marissa from Jason's office. Just wanted to let you know that HR had some questions today. Someone forwarded a screenshot of a social media post. It seems there's been some confusion about boundaries and travel. Just letting you know." Confusion. That was rich. I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle the vendor had gifted me. It tasted like sun and revenge. The next day, I knew Jason would arrive at his sterile, sleek office, open his inbox, and feel the ground shift beneath his designer shoes. HR would ask politely. He'd lie poorly. And I wouldn't even need to be in the room. He'd played a game. I'd just changed the board. Jason always said his team admired him. Maybe they did until they saw who he really was. It was past midnight in Florence, but I was wide awake. The kind of alertness that doesn't come from caffeine or adrenaline, but from clarity, like standing at the edge of something knowing it's time to jump. Marco's apartment was dim, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. He'd offered to leave the room when I said I had a call, but I shook my head. He stayed on the couch, headphones on, a book open on his lap. Silent witness. The laptop glowed in front of me. The connection was secure. The woman on the screen wore her hair in a low twist and glasses that reflected her monitor. "Claire," she said, voice smooth, rehearsed. "I'm Ms. Taylor from the People and Culture office at Jace Corp. Thank you for joining this call so late." "No problem," I said. "It's actually the best time for me. He's asleep." She didn't ask who he was. She didn't need to. I opened the folder I'd prepped, exposure.zip, unpacked, and sorted into labeled subfolders. I clicked on one labeled Financial Interference, another Abandonment, another Harassment Patterns. "I've submitted a formal complaint to your department," I said. "This meeting is to supplement that with further documentation." Ms. Taylor nodded. "We received your email. Please walk me through the events from the beginning." I did. Chronologically, clinically. No embellishment, no theatrics. I told her about Florence, about the hotel reservation that vanished, the return ticket that was mysteriously canceled, the bank account access that disappeared overnight. I read her the voicemail Jason left. I showed her screenshots of texts where he mocked me. I presented everything like evidence, not pain. Marco looked up once when I read the line Jason had texted his friend, left the wife, in Florence. Let's see how she does without a leash. His eyes were unreadable. Ms. Taylor didn't flinch. She typed steadily. And you mentioned someone named Amanda Lee, she asked. Yes. She was on his team. He used to copy me on emails to her, then delete them later. He also joked about her at dinner, said she was too moral to be fun. Ms. Taylor blinked. We've had concerns about internal culture for a while, but nothing formal. She might talk, I said. If she knows someone's listening now. There was a pause. I'll reach out to her, she said, discreetly. After we ended the call, I felt a tremor in my hands. Not fear, not fatigue. Something deeper, like a wire that had been pulled too tight for too long, was finally going slack. Marco closed his book and set it down. He didn't say anything, just handed me a cup of tea I hadn't seen him make. The next afternoon, an email from Amanda arrived. It contained a PDF of archived Slack messages from over a year ago. Screenshots. Time-stamped. Jason had typed, training my wife like a Labrador. She sits. She stays. She doesn't bark in meetings. Another read, Claire's job is to look pretty and order drinks. Don't worry, she knows her place. Attached were emojis. Laughing faces. Thumbs up. No one pushed back. No one told him to stop. Amanda wrote in the email, I didn't know what to say then, but I do now. I forwarded everything to Ms. Taylor. She replied within the hour. Thank you. This is more than enough to open an internal review. Ms. Taylor didn't smile when she said, that's more than enough to open an internal review. When power slips away from someone like Jason, he doesn't notice the fall. He notices the silence that follows. The first email arrived at 6:02 a.m. Florence time. Subject line, let's be adults about this. I didn't open it right away. I saw the preview, Jason's familiar cadence, all lowercase charm dressed up as humility. Look, I've been thinking. You made your point. Can we not drag this out? Just come home, Claire. We'll talk. I'll even go to therapy if that's what you want. That was his idea of surrender, contingent, performative, and still entirely in his voice. I was sitting at a small table by the cafe window, the kind with chipped paint and unbalanced legs. A cappuccino cooled by my elbow. My laptop open. A blank document stared back at me, cursor blinking like a dare. Marco had gone to meet a contact at the local legal office. Lucia popped in and out from behind the counter, humming a tune I didn't recognize, but was starting to like. Everything around me was quiet, soft, steady. The only chaos left was in my inbox. By 6:47 a.m., there were 2 more emails. The tone had shifted. What the hell are you trying to prove? Do you think your little rebellion means anything? You've had your tantrum. Enough. I closed the laptop. I didn't respond. I didn't even flinch. The distance between who I had been and who I was becoming could be measured by my pulse steady, even as his unraveling grew louder. By midday, he'd called my sister. I didn't hear the conversation, but a voicemail came through later. Megan forwarded it, her voice clipped and flat. He said you're having a breakdown, that you're unstable, that you need help. She didn't ask if it was true, just said, let me know if you need anything. We've got your back. It was the first time in years she'd said we. By evening, Jason had escalated further. Lucia came to me holding her phone wide-eyed. Did you change your banking credentials recently? She asked softly. I did. Why? My cousin works for your bank's fraud department. Someone just tried to access your new account from a flagged IP address in Phoenix. I blinked. The air suddenly tasted metallic. We reported it. The access had failed. The attempt had been blocked at the two-factor verification. I stared at the screen reading the digital footprint Jason left in his desperation. Wrong password entered 3x. Access denied. Security alert sent. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Instead, I opened my laptop again. This time, I drafted a message. Not an emotional plea, not a confrontation. A formal notice prepared with the help of my lawyer in Arizona. It read, Jason. This is to confirm that effective immediately I have taken the necessary legal and digital steps to protect my identity, finances, and communication channels. Any further attempts to access my accounts or spread defamatory claims about my mental health will be addressed through formal legal means. Do not contact me again unless through legal counsel. Claire Marco read it once, said nothing, then nodded. It's clean, professional, measured. I hovered over the send button for 3 seconds. Clicked. That night there were no new emails, no calls, no threats, just silence. It was louder than any scream. The next morning, I walked along the Arno River, the wind brushing through my hair. The city felt different, not smaller, but less overwhelming. Like it was no longer pressing against me, but walking beside me. Jason wasn't gone, but he was finally behind me. Control wasn't taken from him. He handed it away the moment he thought I was helpless. I named the file exposure.zip because I knew once it opened, everything else would collapse. The library smelled like dust and secondhand ambition. High-arched ceilings echoing footsteps and students hunched over exam prep. I took a seat near the back beneath a tall window that filtered in the cold morning light of Florence. My laptop hummed to life like it already knew what I was about to do. Marco had walked me there, said nothing on the way, just handed me a croissant and squeezed my shoulder once before leaving. I hadn't asked him to wait. I knew what I had to do now, and I didn't need an audience. The folder sat on my desktop like it had always belonged there, exposure.zip. It was quiet, simple. Inside it, a history of humiliation stripped down into dates and screenshots, bank statements, email headers, phone logs, photos, Slack messages from Amanda, flight itineraries with Jason's name as the booking agent, a downloaded copy of that smug email he sent his friends, left the wife in Florence. Let's see how she does without a leash. It was all organized, clean, time-stamped, unforgiving. I connected to a public Wi-Fi masked through the VPN Marco had installed for me. He'd walked me through it twice. They won't know where it's coming from. It's just data. Just truth, he'd said. At 9:04 a.m., I opened my inbox. My hands were steady. To HR Director JJRSolutions.com. Legal, Dept, JJRSolutions.com. CC, Jason, Amij JJRSolutions.com. Subject for internal clarity attachment exposure. Zip encrypted passcode clarity. 2023, no explanation, no preamble. I didn't need to narrate what was obvious. I hit send. For a moment, I sat back as if something might physically shift the air around me. But the library stayed silent. A girl in the next row flipped a page. A pigeon fluttered on the windowsill. Life went on. A minute later, the auto-confirmation pinged. Your message has been received and is under review by our legal team. I didn't smile. Not yet. Instead, I opened the affidavit my lawyer had helped me write. It wasn't just about emotional abuse. It was a clear report of financial sabotage, psychological manipulation, and professional misconduct, especially given Jason's position of power. I read it again this time, not as the woman who had written it, but as someone who finally believed herself. I stayed in the library for 2 more hours pretending to read a novel, but really watching my inbox. Nothing came. I didn't expect it to. I knew these things moved slowly, deliberately. That was the point. You couldn't rush the fall of a man who thought he built the ground. By early evening, Marco and I were back at his apartment. I boiled water for tea while he browsed an old newspaper, pretending not to check in on me every 10 minutes. He didn't ask if I'd heard anything. I didn't tell him that I'd nearly forgotten how to breathe properly since hitting send. At 5:46 p.m., the reply came. From HR. No formal greeting, no passive-aggressive legalese, just 3 lines in clean, unassuming font, Claire. We received it. Jason's system access has been suspended pending investigation. HR department. That was it. No apologies, no praise, no closure, and I didn't need any of that. The email wasn't dramatic. No all caps. Just 3 words that told me everything had changed. We received it. Jason always hated boardrooms, probably because he could only dominate them one-on-one. The conference call was scheduled for 8:30 a.m. Arizona time. For once, Jason wasn't early. When he did appear, video off, voice sharp, half a second behind his first words, weren't hello. They were, let's make this quick. Ms. Taylor didn't acknowledge the tone. Good morning, everyone. We're recording. Present are Jason McAllister, HR Director Taylor, General Counsel Morris Amanda Lee, and Senior VP Mr. Colton. We'll begin. Jason exhaled loudly, the kind of sound he made in meetings when someone said something beneath him. He was used to being the one setting the tone. He didn't realize this meeting had already moved past him. Ms. Taylor continued. We're initiating a formal internal review regarding personal conduct, spousal abandonment during corporate travel, financial misappropriation, and reputational harm to the company. We'll begin with Amanda Lee. Amanda's voice, steady and unshaken, came through clear. Jason's jokes were never harmless. He joked about training his wife, about leaving her behind like a broken suitcase. I reported one comment months ago, no one followed up. Jason chuckled. Are we serious? This is gossip. Ms. Taylor didn't respond. Claire's pre-recorded statement is next. You may not interrupt. The audio file clicked on. My voice filled the call. No emotion, no tremble. Just facts. This is Claire McAllister. I was left without money, documents, or communication in Florence by my husband, Jason McAllister. He booked our travel. He canceled my return ticket. He drained our joint accounts. I've attached records of these transactions. I've submitted these statements under oath to my attorney and local consular staff. Jason has archived years of controlling messages. So have I. Silence followed, the kind that couldn't be spun. Jesus, Jason muttered. The legal counsel spoke next. We've reviewed the attached financial data. Joint funds were transferred into a separate private account 3 weeks prior to the trip. Under Arizona marital law, this may qualify as breach of fiduciary duty. Jason barked out, You can't be serious. This is a marriage issue. She's pissed I left. That's it. You are out of order, Ms. Taylor said. Please mute Jason's line. A soft click confirmed it. Mr. Colton cleared his throat. I've managed Jason directly for 6 years. I've received 2 informal complaints over the last quarter, both dismissed due to lack of documentation. That's no longer the case. Jason unmuted himself. Colton, come on. You know me. That's not the issue anymore, Colton replied. Pause. You're on paid leave effective immediately. We're freezing your access until further notice. Jason's breath hitched. I want a copy of the complaint. Ms. Taylor didn't flinch. It's already with legal. And your wife's lawyer. You don't have to destroy someone. You just have to let them destroy themselves. Jason walked into the building like he still owned it. Security had been warned, but no one dared to stop him. He'd paced those marble floors for years, his badge swiping without resistance, his voice echoing in hallways even when he wasn't speaking. The arrogance was so built in, so natural, that it took a full 30 seconds for anyone to realize he shouldn't be there. By then, he was already down the hall. The IT administrator, a quiet man named Felix, stood as Jason stormed into the server corridor. I need to speak to Colton. Now Jason snapped. Felix blinked. He's not on site, Mr. McAllister. You've been. I don't care, Jason said, waving him off. You work for me. Everyone here works for me. Felix hesitated, then reached toward a wall-mounted device, subtle like scratching an itch. The small motion activated a camera feed and a timestamp log. Jason didn't notice. He turned and saw Amanda in the hallway holding a stack of HR files. Her face was unreadable, which only made him angrier. "You really want to play this victim card?" Jason said, walking toward her. "You think this ends well for you?" Amanda didn't flinch. "This company exists because of me," he continued, his voice rising. "You think anyone's going to care about your sob story when I've brought in over $14 million in revenue this quarter alone?" HR had already filed a request for building security archives. The minute he walked in, the system began logging everything. Amanda took a step back, but only to put her folder on the table. "You should leave." "I should," he laughed, eyes wild. "I should be in that boardroom. Instead, they've got you and Claire writing fanfiction." "That part?" he shouted. Claire wasn't there to hear it, but her attorney was, and the building's sound-activated cameras were recording at a clarity designed for deposition playback. In Florence, Claire received a message from Mr. Dawson, her lawyer. He did it. He attached a 2-minute clip. Jason red-faced, aggressive, interrupting, threatening, puffed up with his own legend. Amanda backing away. Felix nervously watching. A secretary quietly dialing a number from behind a cubicle partition. The entire meltdown time-stamped and clear. No edits, no music, no room for interpretation. Mr. Dawson's email included a second line, forwarded to court. Claire didn't respond right away. She just closed the laptop and stepped outside Marco's apartment into the golden early evening, breathing in air that felt just a little bit different. By the time Jason was escorted out of the building, 2 board members had already confirmed the video's contents. No more reviews, no more procedural language. Jason McAllister was terminated for cause, effective immediately. Claire never saw footage of him leaving, but she did hear about it. They didn't even let him pack his office. Someone else did it for him. Sometimes you have to burn down the whole house to see the sky again. Jason used to say silence was weakness. That quiet was a sign of surrender. So when the notifications stopped coming, when my name no longer appeared on his lock screen, I imagine the silence must have screamed louder than any words I could have chosen. I didn't respond to his last 3 emails, or his 2 a.m. call, or the private message sent through a mutual friend masked as concern. He's not doing well. Maybe just hear him out. No. That door was sealed, boarded, and set alight the moment he told me I wouldn't survive without him. Now I was watching the smoke rise. From my phone, the unraveling came in pixels. His LinkedIn profile was currently inactive. A rumor thread on Reddit about a mid-level executive being escorted from a building in Scottsdale was gaining traction. Amanda had posted something vague but powerful. It only takes one brave person to speak up, and then others can breathe again. It had over 1,000 likes, 3 reshares from people I recognized, and dozens of comments below it saying thank you in different forms. Marco sat across from me at a corner table in the quietest part of the cafe. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. He simply placed a cappuccino in front of me, slid over a biscotti, and glanced at my screen once. "He's quiet," he noted. "Very," I said. "It's almost peaceful." But inside that peace there was still a storm winding down. My lawyer called to confirm that the expedited divorce proceedings were moving faster than expected. "The court's response time is record-breaking," he said. "When the paper trail is this clean, judges don't need theatrics." The best part, Jason hadn't contested anything yet. Not publicly. Maybe he thought silence would preserve dignity, or maybe he hadn't figured out how to pivot his story yet. But people were pivoting without him. Our mutual friends slowly vanished. One unfollowed, then another. The group chat's gone. Even my sister told me she'd seen 2 of them at a brunch, whispering, shifting in their chairs when she passed. I opened his last message again, not because I was tempted, but because I wanted to face it one final time. "You win." I hope he's worth it. I stared at it for a long minute, not out of nostalgia, just to understand the smallness of it, the cowardice packed into those 9 words, the idea that I had left him for someone as if the only motivation a woman could ever have for freedom was another man, as if the concept of choosing herself didn't compute. I began to type. He wasn't the prize, freedom was. That was it. No punctuation, no exclamation, no venom, just truth. I read it over once, not for grammar, but for finality. I remembered the house we used to live in, 2 stories of beige and silence. For 5 years, I hadn't been allowed to lock the doors. Jason said it made him anxious that it was unnecessary in our neighborhood. Looking back, I realize it wasn't about safety, it was about access. He wanted to be able to walk in at any time. He didn't want me to have the power to say no. Now I was living in a place where every door had a lock and the key was mine alone. I took a breath. My finger hovered over the screen. I didn't shake. Claire presses send, and with it, the last tie to Jason is cut. I didn't stay in Italy for Marco. I stayed because this broken house reminded me of me. The first morning in Tuscany, I opened the shutters and was greeted by a symphony of cracked walls, scattered tools, and a stray cat sunbathing on the stone steps like he owned the place. I didn't mind. The house smelled like dust and lemon cleaner, and the breeze carried in the hum of bees from the vineyard down the hill. Marco handed me a key with paint on his hands and said simply, "Do what you need to do. No strings." He didn't hover. He disappeared into another wing of the building, leaving me alone with the echo of my own presence. The first thing I did was pick up a broom. There was no audience, no instructions. Just me and the grit. I swept one hallway until my arms ached and my shirt clung to my back. I moved an old table against a different wall, broke a spider's web with my face, laughed, out loud. The cat followed me from room to room, tail flicking unimpressed. That evening, I found a chipped ceramic vase on the windowsill. It slipped from my hands, shattered against the terracotta floor. I froze, expecting to flinch, to panic, to apologize to someone, but there was no one. So I swept it up piece by piece, and something inside me shifted. The next few days passed like music without lyrics. I painted one of the guest room walls a soft blue. The paint bled in uneven lines, and I didn't try to fix it. I baked bread without a recipe. I burned the first loaf and started again. I let my phone rest face down on the dresser. I didn't jump when it buzzed. I barely cared. Lucia arrived one afternoon with olive oil and a new dress she insisted I try. She sat on the edge of the kitchen counter sipping espresso, watching me cut tomatoes like it was a performance. "You're quieter," she said eventually, but louder somehow. I smiled. Not politely, genuinely. I think I finally like the sound of my own silence. Outside, the sun dipped behind the hills in that dramatic way Tuscany seems to do every single evening. It painted the house in gold and amber. Even the cracks looked warm. I took a notebook from Marco's shelf and started writing. Not about Jason. Not about revenge. About stillness. About bread. About watching a spider rebuild its web every morning on the porch. About being alone without feeling lonely. I didn't tell Marco I was writing. He never asked. That night, after the cat curled itself on the foot of my bed like an uninvited guardian, I checked my email for the first time in days. There, buried between spam and a note from my lawyer, was a subject line I didn't expect. "We read your piece. We want to reprint it. Full feature. I never planned to tell the world, but I figured someone might need to hear it." The cursor blinked like a slow heartbeat on the screen. I sat by the open window of my room at the B&B, my room, not Jason's, not anyone else's. The evening air smelled of rosemary and warm brick. The cat stretched lazily along the sill, one paw dangling over the ledge, as if even he had finally decided to relax. Outside, the last rays of sun bathed the rolling hills in burnt gold, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like I was running toward or away from anything. I was simply here. The story had taken me weeks to write, not because I didn't know what happened. God, I remembered every moment, but because I wanted the words to come from a place beyond fury. Not sanitized, but settled. I didn't name him. Not once. But I named everything else. The withdrawal of my name from our accounts. The phone calls that sounded like war disguised as love. The surveillance disguised as safety. The jokes that cut like razors wrapped in silk. I called the piece my husband left me in Italy as a prank. But he didn't expect what I'd find there. I read it one more time just to be sure. There was no revenge in it, no gloating, only the facts and the stillness that had followed. Then I hit publish. I didn't watch the metrics obsessively, but the notifications began to roll in. First one share, then 20, then hundreds. Comments flooded in beneath the post, some short, some trembling with fury, others with aching recognition. I thought it was just me. Thank you for putting it into words. My God. This hit like a freight train. I didn't reply to all of them. I couldn't. But I read every single one. A knock at the door broke the quiet. Marco peeked in holding a box of light bulbs. Kitchen's finally fixed, he said gently. You want to come down for wine later? Maybe, I said. I might stay here a little while longer. He nodded, never pushing. That was his way. He left the door open on his way out. A few minutes later, my sister called. Her face appeared on the screen, flushed with emotion, eyes rimmed red. You did it, she whispered. You made something out of it. I'm so damn proud of you. I swallowed hard. I didn't know it would mean anything. It means everything, to people who didn't think they were allowed to say it out loud. We stayed on the line for a while, neither of us speaking. Just breathing. Just knowing. Later that night, after I closed the laptop and folded the blanket at the foot of the bed, I wandered downstairs. The sign was hanging over the entryway now. I hadn't seen it finished. Casa Nuova. New home. Simple hand-painted, slightly crooked. Perfect. Not because I planned to stay forever. Maybe I would. Maybe not. That wasn't the point. The house had been abandoned, forgotten. It needed patching and patience. It wasn't a fortress. It didn't protect me. It met me. It gave me space to become someone I hadn't even realized I'd lost. The next morning, as the sun rose pale and quiet over the hills, a car pulled into the gravel driveway. A woman stepped out, travel-worn and cautious. She carried a backpack that looked too heavy for her frame. Her eyes scanned the house the way I once had, half hopeful, half afraid. And then she looked at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Because I recognized that look. I had worn it like armor once. Every single view means a meal for someone in need. Just by watching this video, you're giving warmth, hope, and a full plate to those less fortunate. So watch now, share now, subscribe to the channel, and let's spread love together.